parents or whatever the case is, they're always focusing on what's negative, and then they're angry. They wonder why they're angry all the time, right? Well, it's because of the fact that the image, the perspective on the image, is causing the emotion of anger. And so if you're so you're always looking at it that way, but then you got another problem on your hands. If you keep doing it, then you end up habituating the emotions and disposing them to easily move to anger or sorrow or despair or hatred or whatever the case, or any negative emotion. You dispose it to easily move that way. And then you also habituate it so that it's very easy to do it. So then basically what happens, and this is basically what depression is that people are just focusing on the negative all the time. Okay. But then also the other thing is that when you make the choice to keep thinking about the thing, the will moves the imagination to stay focused on the thing, and so the cogitative power learns that when certain things come into your experience, or your family members or whatever the case is, comes into your experience, that the cogitative power, because you're looking at the negative all the time, the cogitative power gets habituated into doing what? Going back into the memory and finding what? Not the good stuff about the individual, the bad stuff about the individual. And so it's constantly bringing stuff back into it. This is when people, if they've had a bad experience of somebody and then they've kind of given into the thought and thinking about it, they'll say, why is it that every time I'm around him or her, I just want to strangle her? And I don't even know why. You know, the thing she did was long year in the past. Yeah, the problem is that you habituated the cogitative power to look at it that way. The second thing, and the next thing is that the possible intellect, when it makes an active judgment here to know the truth of something, we can habituate our intellect to make specific kinds of judgments in relationship to specific kinds of things. So that if we're always looking at something in a negative way, we're going to habituate the possible intellect to look at everything from the point of view of what's negative. Now, then, the will is a blind faculty. It can't will anything on its own. So this negativity, this negative judgment that we have of people or things or whatever the case is, which is in the possible intellect, is presented to the will, which then means that the will is going to suffer sorrow and things of this sort, and it's going to be painful to our will, or we'll start taking delight in it. Where does that come in? St. Thomas says, when we act according to the disposition that's in our faculty, regardless of whether the object causes pain or not, we get a pleasure out of it. They discovered this in modern brain studies, that people who are depressed, their brain actually releases pleasure drugs when they think about negative stuff. Okay, and we can get into the habit of that. And the converse of that is the case, we know is the case, because if we're in a negative disposition and then somebody comes along and tries to cheer us up, we find the guy annoying and we don't want to go that direction. We find it painful, right? We find it the opposite. Okay. So basically, if you're focusing on the negative all the time, now it doesn't mean that you put your head in the sand. It just means that you only give something the degree of tension that it's necessary. Usually what drives the negativity is some kind of an attachment. They have an attachment to the church, or the state of politics, or the state of their family, or whatever the case is. And so as a result of that, they're always looking at the negative, and they're always trying to purge the negative out of the individual. Right? So, and this is something that can be a bit of a problem, because I've met families where the father or the mother is extremely hard on the children because they think, if I keep on top of them, eventually they'll become perfect. That is absolutely absurd from a very basic principle. I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a very easy kind of mindset to kind of fall into. Why is it absurd? It's based upon the principle of sufficient reason, that the existence of a thing is accountable either in itself or in another. What does that mean? It means you can't give what you don't have. If you're not perfect, you're not going to make your children perfect. If you're not perfect, you're not going to make the church perfect. If you're not perfect, you're not going to make the politics perfect. So the first thing you have to accept the fact is that you don't have the capacity to render even yourself perfect. So that's what you have to do. You just realize, okay, I can't, this isn't my... And part of the negativity is getting sucked into that idea, if I just keep on top of it, or I keep thinking about it, or I keep working at it, it'll get better. It's not going to happen. That's the first thing that you have to kind of realize. And all you're doing is by focusing all of that is just habituating your faculties to a bit of to becoming disordered. Ultimately, we're only thinking of things that are evil. In fact, that's really what people who are in hell are. All the people in hell and all the demons in hell, the only thing they think about is stuff that's negative. All the time. So I tell people, well, look, the more you think about this stuff, the more you're just kind of approaching hell. This is what hell's like. It's just, you're always thinking everything that's negative and evil. Whereas everybody in heaven, even when they see bad things happening, there's still joy. Now, okay, so what does this mean? It means that part of this negativity is only focusing again on the things to the degree that's necessary on your state in life, which is going to be the series of things we'll talk about later, but necessary regarding your state life, and don't spend any more time thinking about it. Not any more time than is absolutely necessary in order for you to fulfill your duties, or whatever the case is, or to pray, whatever, but you don't focus on it. This negativity where you're focusing on the thing and then things become disorder. By the way, when you're focusing on the thing that's negative, what happens is over the course of time, when you're always looking at the thing negative, if the reality is that the thing changes and isn't as bad as you think it is, eventually you stop knowing the truth about the thing. This is what happens all the time when I talk to people about the papacy. Everybody's looking at the situation in the papacy, and there's just constant negativity. If they knew what the limits were of papal infallibility, and also, the fact that historically there have been popes that have held heretical ideas, they would realize, okay, as long as it's within this confines, it's not an issue. They would focus on the positive aspect. Under these conditions, he's infallible. Under these, I don't worry about it. God will take care of it. Okay. So, and it doesn't mean I don't pray for him. It just means that I can't be focusing on it. But what's happening is now they're getting to the point where their judgment is getting drawn to one extreme or another. St. Thomas says that truth is judging a thing not greater than it is, not less than it is, but as it is.